So welcome to today's class. We will start with some breathing exercises. And if anyone who is joining us is not comfortable with deepening their breath, or at any time the breathing exercises make them feel uncomfortable, you can return to your normal breath and just kind of let go of the expanding breath. So before we get started with breathing, I'd like to invite everyone to just take a moment to check in. And as you do that, if you'd like to, you can close down your eyes. Just take a minute to check in with yourself, drop inside, and just notice, without any judgment or criticism, what's going on for you today. And then I'm also going to invite you to just check in with yourself mentally. Honor wherever you are, knowing you're exactly where you need to be. No expectations. And then finally, checking in with yourself emotionally as well. Just honoring, again, wherever you are, without judgment. As you let go of that self check-in, I invite you to begin noticing your breath. And so without changing your breath, begin simply by noticing all the different aspects of your breath. So are you breathing through your nose or through your mouth? Are you breathing into your belly, or are you breathing up into your chest? Notice where the breaths are going. You can also notice how the breath is affecting the body. Is it expanding you, or does the breath feel tight? Does the breath feel free, or does the breath feel forced? So just noticing your breath to begin with. And we'll transition to a breathing exercise that focuses on breathing into 3 different parts of the lungs. So first we'll send the breath into the bottom of the lungs, and then we'll focus on sending the breath into the middle of the lungs, and then we'll focus on sending the breath into the upper part of the lungs. And so again, if at any time working through this, it makes you feel uncomfortable, or you don't like using the breath in that way, please feel free to return to your normal breath. And so as we begin, take a deep breath and focus on sending your breath all the way into the bottom of your lungs. So expanding the bottom of the rib cage, maybe even expanding the belly. And if at any time the breath is feeling particularly forced, or if it creates tension, really step back a little bit, because the point is not to create any tension. But continue to send the breath into the deepest part of your lungs. And to facilitate that, you may even want to put your hands either on your belly or on the bottom of your rib cage, just to enhance that sensation that you're breathing into the bottom of the rib cage. And so focus on expanding forward, sideways, and backwards as well into the bottom of the lungs. And then exhaling slowly. So inhaling into the bottom of the lungs, Expanding in all directions and exhaling slowly. Now we'll move up to the middle of the lungs. So sending the breath into the middle of the lungs. Focus this time on expanding through the rib cage. So expanding forward and sideways and into your upper back as well. Or maybe your mid back. So a new area to expand for your breathing. And notice if there's a difference here when you send your breath into the middle of the lungs versus the bottom of the lungs. Is there a difference in the way it makes you feel? So continue to send the breath into the middle of the lungs, expanding in all directions, and then slowly exhaling. Notice how that feels in your body. And now we'll transition to breathing up into the top of the lungs. So with your next inhale, breathe into the area just below the collarbones, into your armpits, and into the whole upper back. So you're expanding through the top of your lungs. And slowly exhale. Inhale into the top of the lungs, the area below the collarbones, the armpits, the upper back, expanding in all directions. And exhale slowly. Maybe a couple more breaths into the upper lungs. Notice whether there's any difference here when you breathe into the upper part of the lungs in terms of how it makes you feel, or where you may be feeling that your breath can't expand quite as much. So just noticing these parts about the body without criticism, without expecting to be any different, but just being curious about your body. And so letting go of that breath now, we will bring all three of those together. So first we'll breathe into the bottom of the lungs, and then the middle of the lungs, and then the upper lungs. So this is called a 3-part breath. So with your next inhale, send the breath as deeply as you can into the bottom of the lungs, then the middle lungs, and then the upper lungs, expanding in all directions, and then slowly releasing on the exhale. With your next inhale, sending the breath into the bottom, then the middle, then the upper part of the lungs, and again, slowly exhaling. So continue this 3-part breath for several more breaths, simply focusing again on using the entirety of your lungs, expanding forward, sideways, and backwards in order to use all the muscles that are required in taking full breaths. Slowly exhaling, completely letting the air out as you exhale. Continue to focus on your breath, letting go of any distracting thoughts you may be having. Simply noticing the sensations of the breath, the air moving through the nostrils, the expansion of the rib cage and the belly. Allow the breath to be free and smooth without tension. Seeing if the breath can grow larger, if you can fill the lungs more. And letting go of that 3-part breath, I invite you to come back to your normal breath. Maybe shutting down your eyes if you would like to. And then just taking a moment to notice if there's been any shift for you after doing that 3-part breath.